Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very honored to be a speaker amongst those very distinguished speakers and panels this morning as well. I'd like to thank Antonio Cianci, who invited me to this conference, high-quality conference. I'm very happy to be here. Very briefly, I will talk to you about what Nevastar does, and then I'll talk about private equity and give a lens on the food and agricultural industry through the private equity industry, investment industry, and then talk about the opportunities and the investment opportunities. Nevastar is basically an integrated financial group that has three businesses. One, it's an asset manager, financial asset manager, liquid and illiquid. We are also a fund manager, so we create funds that specifically invest in niches of the investment arena globally. And it goes from liquid fund to illiquid funds. And then there is a private equity advisory and investment business, which I lead. To put that into concrete terms, recently we've done, we arranged a $300 million refinancing of a loan for properties in Russia, $300 million, I should say. We also looked at opportunities, investment opportunities in starch and caviar sturgeon farms in Kazakhstan. We looked at, we are bondholders in the second largest egg producing companies based in Ukraine. We are also, we looked at farmland and storage facilities and cereals drying silos in some of the CIS countries. So that's on the link to the Eurasian theme here. In terms of the private equity industry, give you some figures, some context. There are, in terms of financial asset under management in the world, we're talking about $70 trillion. The alternative asset class, which is made of hedge fund, private equity, commodity finance, infrastructure, real estate, represent 10% of that. And then if you go right on the chart here, the forestry and food and agricultural part of the alternative sector represents 100 billion. So it's still quite small from, you know, if you look at the global picture. The private equity and venture capital industry overall, not just food and agriculture, represents $600 billion for Europe, and that's mostly Western Europe only. So it's a huge amount of money that goes into private companies in Europe. So that's something to keep in perspective. If we look now at what's happening in the private industry in Russia and other CIS countries, it's a much smaller number, and I couldn't actually find an exact number, but I believe it's around 5 to 10 billion, if we're talking about the strict definition of private equity and venture capital. I stand correct, I could be corrected. In terms of what the private equity industry does in the food and agricultural sector, this represents a bit the value chain of the agricultural sector, and what you can see is that this industry focuses or invests in the high-tech bits, so the agricultural technology bits, and that's the venture capital, but also in all the intermediary step of transformation from the crops to, well, not the crops, but after the crops, down to the retail industry, and so that's where the private money is going today. I'd like a few staggering statistics here. The world middle class is going to grow by a huge amount. In 2010, we had 2 billion people in the middle class. In 2020, we will have close to 3.2 billion. And then in 2030, we will have close to 4.5 billion. So we'll have 4.5 billion in middle class, people in middle class. That means that those people are going to eat, and they are going to eat proteins as well. And then on the protein side, if you look at the equation, a little fact which maybe you know, but to produce 1 kilo of farmed salmon, we need to kill 3 kilos of wild fish to feed them. So that doesn't work, right? The equation doesn't work. So this is an area where obviously a lot of R&D is going, and private equity and investment has to find a solution to the protein conundrum. We won't have enough protein, at least sustainable protein, to feed these people. I'll pass on that given the time, but there are plenty of opportunities of investment. This is a McKinsey survey, and they have identified many opportunities to invest in particularly in logistics and storage in emerging market, obviously including Eurasia, as well as protein production in China. Now going down to Italy, the Italian food and agricultural industry obviously is a good illustration of what you can find throughout Southern Europe and of course Northern Europe as well, on the west side of Europe. But this is a typical structure of the industry. So you have a lot of, so here we have 15,000 small companies with sales below 10 million in Italy. We have 3,000 companies which have sales between 10 and 300 million, and you only have 82 companies with sales above 300 million. And that's typical. You can find the same structure in France, in Spain, probably in Germany and the UK. But so that's an opportunity, because a lot of those small companies, I'm talking about not just the 15,000, but also the next 3,000, so the ones which are between 10 and 300 million, a lot of them in this country are actually domestic companies. They don't sell outside. Some of them do, of course, but not all of them. And the role of private equity is to bring capital to help them export to other markets, take their brand, their know-how, their industrial know-how, their marketing know-how, and bring that to Eurasia, the rest of Eurasia and Asia, and export. And the other value added in the private equity is not just capital, it's also expertise. So a good private equity capital brings expertise to actually do that, to actually go international. I'll give you two examples that I've known, and some of them I'm still working on. But I've worked with family-owned companies in Italy, 200 million in sales, mineral water, so they have brands of mineral waters, a lot of mineral water in Italy. And if you look at the drivers of growth here, in this industry, which are innovation, security, and safety. People want secure source of protein or water. Obviously, internationalization and concentration. This company had a lot of things on their plate. One, they were consolidating the domestic Italian company, so they were buying out brands in Italy. Secondly, they needed to internationalize, so they were selling 100% to the domestic market. And obviously, they have all the assets to become very successful outside Italy, and they were looking for capital to expand. We now have also a UK grill restaurant chain, well-known brand. They are present in some part of the world, but not others, and they are looking for capital to expand the brand in other parts, in Eurasia and Asia and the Middle East. And so that's another example of smallish SMEs looking for capital and expertise to invest. So that's the role of private equity, is to take the competitive advantage that a lot of companies in the food and agricultural industry in Europe have, brands and know-how, industrial know-how, process know-how, and then bring the capital and the management expertise to help them expand outside. Thank you.